Welcome to Rock That Relationship, a podcast about all things relationship with Corey and Tracy.
Now let's get real and start creating relationships that rock.
Welcome everyone to Rock That Relationship. We are so excited to be here. This is a really special, episode for this season. We're talking all about divorce, and we have on a friend of ours, Twyla, who's going to be talking with us about her experience in divorce. And it's been really fun to get to know Twyla for, the last few years. And so it's really special when we can have on people that we have a personal connection to on here. So we're really excited to have you on, Twyla. So thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, just to give our listeners kind of a context of who you are.
Well, I'm an artist, an HR professional. I enjoy doing house projects and, like many lesbians, I have lots of tools and I like to play in my workshop. So that's kind of about me.
That's so funny. I've never seen Corey with a tool, and I do have a lot of tools at my house, but I don't know how to use them. So one day I'm going to have you come over and give me a tutorial.
I can, and it'll be safe.
Good. We span the different kinds of tool acclimated lesbians here.
See, I'm like right in the middle, though, because I'll tell you, I've bricked patios before, I've tiled floors before.
You're more handy than me, but I never see you doing it.
No, because you come over and you're like, oh, it's already done.
Right. Yeah.
but Twyla, you go to, you see her.
Twyla, we see it. Yeah, we see it all happening.
Like, oh my gosh, these are amazing.
Happening in her mind, exactly.
Yes.
Because she's an artist.
Yes, exactly. So, well, awesome. Thank you again for being on here. Do you want to start by maybe just telling us a little bit about your divorce? Anything about even your relationship, kind of set us up to kind of understand, what the context is today.
Okay. Well, I think like many people who've gone through a divorce, about this time, which is probably before you actually file or go through the process. You realize, these things aren't going well, and you get into therapy, and hopefully you try to fix it. If you have a healthy relationship, then you come to a good conclusion. If you have a not so healthy relationship, it can be a struggle to get to that point. Mm-hmm. I was more on the not so healthy relationship, and so started about 5 years ago, in what I consider in that process of therapy, try to fix, separation, negotiation, try to work with someone to work it out. And then the realization over 2.5 years ago, that I needed a divorce.
And when was your divorce finalized? Just recently, was it?
Very recently. Mm-hmm. So, that's the part that you don't realize in this process. If you can't work it out, in a healthy way, it's going to be a long, drawn out process. So we tried to work it out. I consulted with an attorney eventually. Good lesson I learned. And then my ex filed, and that was over 2 years ago. Right around 2 years ago.
And then you're in the position of responding. And so did you get an attorney right away, or did you try to do some of it yourself?
I had already fortunately connected with an attorney, the right kind of attorney that I thought if it got to that, because I really wanted to, I always think I'm a positive person. We can work this out. I'm an HR person. Surely we can have a conversation. Yep. We can talk it out. We can both have that what's right, and be fair. And you hope that. But then when, I got my divorce decree, I realized, we're on really, really different pages. I thought we could come down, but we weren't. So I had to contact my attorney, and that's when it took off. And so then it took a long time, and it was not finalized. And I think mine was excessive. I will say, I don't think it's for everyone, because my attorney and actually some of the court officials had said this is taking really long. But it wasn't finalized, signed off by the judge until which we came to an agreement. So we didn't go to court, but it was the day before our court date.
And you had been in a couple of court hearings, like preliminary hearings. Yeah, I think
actually preliminary. We did, we'll get to this, but we did arbitration twice.
Oh, okay.
And
with the judge.
With a judge, yes.
Okay.
And the second time it worked, and then signed off. And so it was end of September of last year.
Interesting. And you got divorced in the county that I practice in now.
Okay.
Right? So we're all in Tucson, Pima County.
Yes.
And it's a relatively small-ish town. I mean, I think we have like 10 family law judges, which, you know, it's very interesting, I think, for a lot of people, whether to go with a mediator or an attorney. You've said, you know, I think people try mediation first, not everybody. And some people are just, their personality is they go straight to nuclear and take it to an attorney, right? Would you recommend that people maybe try mediation first and then see, because when you say arbitration, that's after, you know, that's not mediation. So that's an arbitrator or a settlement judge will help you, you know, come to an agreement on the record versus mediation where you kind of just have a facilitator and then come up with an agreement.
You know, I think I absolutely recommend that you try mediation. You just never know. And I think it helps to understand the other person and for them to hear your perspective. So if anything, it just creates greater understanding between the two. I don't know if it would have worked in my case, but I certainly think it's a good thing to do.
So you were saying earlier on that you had already kind of sought out an attorney just kind of initially to just get some ideas and then went back to the same person. What was it about this attorney that drew you to them? Was there something, was it a referral or did you say like I align with their values or was it like they just happen to be free? Like not free like coffee, but available.
Oh, let's get a free attorney. That would be great.
But more like they were available because sometimes you can't get in to meet with people or they're too full of caseloads. Like what drew you to this person?
Well, it was a friend of mine said this is the best family law attorney firm in the city. I don't know if that's true or not, but I trusted this person because she'd been through the process. And then when I called them, it was really nice. And I don't want to advertise for anyone, so I'm alone. But I reached out to them, and they were really good about, you know, would you prefer a female attorney? You know, help us understand, you know, what your situation is. And so I landed on an attorney, and actually a male attorney initially, who was really good at property because that was the biggest piece of contention was we own several pieces of joint property. So we needed somebody that I needed somebody that truly understood property law because I thought I understood, but I was getting something different in what was being proposed in the settlement that didn't seem legal to me. But I did know enough that I thought, let me get a property attorney. And it actually ended up, he went to another firm and then he left law practice. So I think that kind of drug things out a little bit for me. And I think I ended up with an amazing attorney. She was fantastic.
And what did you like about her?
Well, she was very direct with me, and I appreciate that. I don't want someone to make me feel good. I'm paying you to tell me what's the right thing to do. And if I wasn't, you know, listening to her, she would, you know, she'd say, I need you to listen to this. And she would be very forthright of, I know you don't want to take this deal, but this is a good deal. You need to do it. Or no, don't take this. And the other attorney involved of my ex didn't really do a lot of work. And so she would just pick it up and get it done. So she was very driven. She's very well connected in the family law community, so she could arrange arbitrators very quickly where others couldn't. And she just, I enjoyed her direct way of operating. When we're all in a room, she was just very direct without being mean or, you know, anything along those lines.
Right. And I think that's great. I think like personality-wise, people really need to find somebody that they feel comfortable with because it is a very intimate, embarrassing, you're exposing your private life to people, right? I mean, and also you were in a long-term marriage, right? So there's also other things to consider, very emotional. And do you feel like an attorney in general or your attorney in general was able to help you with any of that emotional stuff, or did you seek that elsewhere, and did you process all of that like separately? So we've talked about like there's the legal part and then the emotional part of a divorce. Yeah,
I chose, and I had been working on this, like I said, for multiple years. So to your point, I was married for 23 years. And so I got into therapy, and that's my mode of operating, not for everyone. I wanted to keep the two separate, and I'm not sure that that my attorney, I think she would have done some, but to me, it was much better to process the grieving side of it and the letting go side of it. And then how do I be healthy and not make the same mistakes? And how do I do better? How do I be a better partner? And so I used a therapist for that. And that I highly, highly recommend.
That's
and I
fantastic.
think I got the best therapist in town. She's fantastic.
Gosh, you get the best lawyers and the best therapists.
I know we need your resource list. We'll just keep it.
I'm a lawyer here right here too.
Okay, all right. Well,
there's a lot of good law firms in town. Okay.
There you go. So when you were talking like from your attorney, we'll start with the attorney because I'm also curious about the therapist too. But with the attorney, what was the best maybe kind of advice they gave you? Maybe it wasn't specific to your situation, but you said that you really liked that she was really direct. But was there certain advice that she said like that might have just stood out, where you'd say if our listeners could hear this, it might really help them as they're moving forward in their divorce process?
I would say I got a lot of good advice and bad advice across the board. So for my attorney, her advice was just really filtering out what was real and what was not real. So, me saying, I don't want to pay that. And she's like, you really need to pay this. We need to do this, hire someone to look at our retirement financials. You just need to do this. And, it was painful because it cost a lot of money, but I needed to do it.
Right.
But I'd say overall, there was just some really great advice. The first I got from my friend that I didn't listen to as quickly was go get an attorney right now. As soon as you are thinking divorce, go get an attorney. And I was in that mindset of, well, maybe I can work this out. And I shouldn't have done that because that probably added 6 months onto the process that I didn't need to have. The best advice I got was from a friend. And she said, it's going to be really turbulent probably, and it's going to be rough, but just remember throughout this, be fair and just. Just think of that in everything that you do and everything decision that you make. When you're feeling frustrated, just think, I'm going to be fair and just. I don't need to be super nice. I don't need to be bending over backwards, but I need to operate with a place of being fair and just.
I love that.
Because, I like that. So I got the chills like listening to that, because if everybody went into life with that kind of philosophy, conflict or otherwise, I mean, think about how much better of a society would be. And a divorce process is one of the more contentious things that we do. And to keep that at the heart of your integrity of your character, of who you are, it says just so much.
Well, and
I'm going to give 2 more pieces of advice that I got that I really liked also.
Okay.
One was don't fight over pots and pans.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems really simple, but if you are having something that's contentious, does it really matter who gets that thing, whatever it is? Because it just creates more turbulence, and you don't need that. So I was fine with that, and I just gave it up. I was okay. Take it. I don't care, because I don't want to fight over pots and pans.
Right.
The other thing, though, kind of related to this, which I got from my cousin, she said, just videotape the house. Just tape everything in there before anything's removed, because that way when it gets down to negotiation, you know what you're negotiating over. And it really, for me, in my case, without going into too much detail, it was really important that I knew what was in the house when we decided to divorce.
Wow. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And you do have a pet, and you do a pet. So you have no children, is that correct?
No.
Okay. And then you have a pet, though, and you guys do a pet kind of like a custody agreement, right? Was that written up officially as well?
Yes, it was.
That's fantastic. I recommend that to everybody.
Well, and it does help, because that way it's really clear. And if we want to change anything, we can, but that way there's not, and actually we had it written up prior to the divorce being finalized. That way it was, and with our attorneys. So that way it was really clear, where we exchange, when we exchange, how long we keep, who's financially responsible for what. There's just a lot of details you don't think about, but again, can create tension.
Creates a lot of tension and anger, right? Like I have some friends who just went through that, where they were sharing the dogs, and then suddenly the one stopped, and they don't have anything in writing. And I was advising them on what to do, and one thing was to stop posting and remove any Facebook posts about it, because it's a very emotional thing. And I think that's something really important. I mean, you said you're an HR professional, and we know how HR people are, right? Like, you people do everything right, and you better not do anything wrong. And like during the relationship, I mean, you certainly have emotions, and, you know, you probably, like, I mean, did you ever have the desire to, I mean, I know you personally, so I know you don't do this, but like posting stuff on Facebook, trying to get people on your side, that kind of thing. Like, how do you suggest people handle that?
You know, I didn't feel the desire to do that. I guess partially because of the work that I do and the environments that I've worked in. I know that anything you put on Facebook will be there forever and somebody will find it.
Yeah.
So
and use it against you.
Yeah. And plus, as a person who hires people, I know that sometimes Facebook pages are looked at. So I just don't go there. Right. But even to go a little bit farther to get people on my side, I just, in my personal belief, going back to being fair and just, if people know me, they're going to know the human that I am. I don't need to get anybody on my side, or, you know, that's personally how I feel. And I encourage people, don't do that. It backfires. You know, eventually, you know, if you stand firm in who you are, your friends will be your friends. I had some friends that left, and, you know, that happens. Some friends go with one, some friends go with the other, and they then came back later. Some didn't come back, and that's okay. You know, I'm blessed with lots of friends. So if she needed more friends, that's fine. I don't care about that, but I would never become this fighting of who gets what in the friends and relationship or social atmosphere.
I think that's so important. But people around you try and whip you up. Did anybody give you bad advice ever that you didn't take, or that you did take and you regret taking?
I did get some bad advice of things of kind of what you're talking about. You should tell people what blah, 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 blah. You know, and I just want to say every divorce has two sides. So I'm sure my ex has all kinds of stories about me, the same as I've got all kinds of stories about my ex. Right. And I did have some friends that encouraged me to do that and to go and talk about that. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. That's just, that's just a code. And even if I wasn't an HR person, it's just a code of ethics I have. You just don't talk about people like that and add it to a divorce. Oh. So I did not listen to that advice, but I was really lucky, and maybe it's just, I know who to trust and who it's like, thank you, but I'm not probably going to listen to you because I don't listen to you for other things in life. Certainly not divorce, but particularly those that I knew had gone through it and I knew had experiences similar to mine, or just had, you know, it was challenging. And plus throughout this, I had my therapist. And, you know, I could bounce ideas off of her. And if I did get, you know, to your point, Tracy, if I did get frustrated about something, I would take it to my therapist and she would say, do you really want to do that? So I could voice those things in frustration.
But I think that's so important. And number one, I'm like, you know, obsessed with therapy. And I was married to a therapist for 8 years, and I couldn't hear what she was saying during the marriage. I talk about this all the time. And if she knew me now, I think she'd like me a lot more. But it's been after 5 years of therapy, right? And I use Corey in that way now, like to bounce things off of her first, because, you know, she'll rewrite stuff for me. Like, it's so important, because my first instinct is like, what did you say? Like, I'm going to respond to that. And if you don't have a way to temper yourself, and I think, you know, like, did you feel like during this experience it was helpful to have friends who'd been through it, or people like a support group, not necessarily a divorce support group, you know, through a counseling center, but like friends, like, so people get it? Because, you know, people say ignorant things that are upsetting, right? And then, and not everybody's experience is the same, but was it helpful to you to have people around you who experience this as well?
Well, I'm one of those lucky people that I have a bestie of 35 years. And, you know, I could call her at 2 a.m. and having that just casual person, not that she's a casual person, but that person in my circle that I could just pick up the phone and say, this is happening. And, you know, I could have a conversation and she could calm me down, you know, or I could be fiery. You haven't seen the fiery side.
You know, I haven't. I want to see it. Like, I'm going to try. It's going to be my new challenge, figure out how to get that fiery side out.
All right. But, you know, she would, if I was just really sad, you know, because I think there's times, you know, when you're in a long-term relationship like that, you experience great sadness, not necessarily over the the person themselves, but just at the loss of something that you put I put a couple decades into building.
Right.
And she knew me throughout. So I was lucky. She was able to say, well, 10 years ago, it was a lot better. Just remember that. This is just your ending, and things are so having that. And then also having friends that maybe because I didn't want to talk to everybody about my divorce, because sometimes I wanted to have divorce-free space, but yet they knew I was going through it. And so just having that series of friends that I could just say, hey, I need to get out of the house, or, oh, I need to go do something, or let's just sit and drink some tequila and watch a movie.
That's so important. Say that again, like divorce. I like that term, divorce-free space, because, and probably it applies to death-free space, right? If someone's passed away, sometimes people want to talk about it, and sometimes they just don't. And I think that, if you can communicate that to people, tell people what you need also is so helpful.
Yeah. And allow that to change too. So I need divorce-free space, but today I'm having a really hard day. Can we talk about it? And then shift back. But I love that, as being able to articulate exactly what you need from different people, because this is a tricky time, and we are complex individuals who might not, maybe having all of a sudden I know for me, when I've gone through things, it's like, for me, the Christmas ornaments are what gets to me. Every time I pull out the Christmas ornaments, it's like, oh my gosh, every one of these has like some X tied to it. And it's like, and I'm not even missing that person, but it triggers. So, you never know.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it isn't about necessarily the person themselves. It really isn't. It's that loss of something that was a part of you, and that memory. And to the point of Christmas decorations, I did a year without any Christmas, because I just couldn't pull the stuff out. I'm a Christmas person, so I love to decorate, have parties, and all that. Go out and cut down my tree, and I just couldn't do it, because there was just too much sadness around it.
And that's okay, right? It's okay not to have Christmas, to not do that. I feel like that's the thing. If people could be like what you're saying, tell people, like, I need divorce-free space, or I don't want to do Christmas this year, or this is what I need. I think that would help people so much. And, we've had so many talks on this podcast about being able to receive what someone's saying, but also be the person to say that. And I have friends that I've helped with their divorces or relationship stuff, and then they don't want the lawyer at certain times in our relationship, right? And so, I have kind of gotten riled up a little bit when somebody's been like, stop. And I'm like, well, but you asked me to be involved, right? So, like, for me, I have to sometimes be the friend, sometimes the lawyer, sometimes, you know what I mean? So it's hard, I think, to do that in life, but that's a skill that I think comes from a lot of therapy, a lot of, understanding communication, and being open to other people saying, like, hey, this is what I need.
When I actually made the decision, this is before filing, but I knew and said I want a divorce to my ex, I was a mess. And, I'd had some health problems. And so, which I contribute to, dealing with getting a divorce, which that's something to think about too, is if you don't handle this, it's going to come out. It will, if it doesn't come out emotionally, it's going to come out in your physical body.
Yeah.
But I called my bestie, and I'm like, I'm coming for Thanksgiving. And she's like, we will take care of you. And I have a group of friends in New Mexico, and I called them my New Mexico clan. And I just went there, and you know me, I'm usually like fixing food for people and taking care of people. And that's kind of my personality. And this was a moment where I really needed to change, and I needed to give that up and be taken care of. And they literally just took care of me for the weekend, for Thanksgiving. They cooked for me. I'd never experienced that kind of circle of love the way, except for my family. But to me, it was partially, I needed to allow that kind of circle of the wagons pulling around me with my New Mexico clan, so that I could start to heal. It was really important, but I'm a pretty strong, independent woman. But I had to let that go and allow people to take care of me.
Because none of us are an island.
I know.
And that's the thing, too, is, the perception of, like, when we need support and we need help, this idea that we're not strong, and we're taught to think that we're really, we are strong because we know enough about ourselves to know that we need the help. And that's really shifted my thinking, is that philosophy of saying, I'm struggling and I need your help, and I'm strong enough, and I don't have any shame about asking for it. And for as long as I need it, and being grateful to the people that show up. And, it sounds like your New Mexico folks, just are amazing. And that's so wonderful they were there for you.
Like I said, I'm blessed. I have circles of friends I'm so lucky to have that have been with me and support me and know when I need help.
Well, it's interesting because a friend who I helped with her divorce, but I was not the lawyer on it, just a friend, and she reached out to me last night saying that, she was really missing her mom. It's her mom's birthday, and her mom's been, I think, gone for 20-something years, and I said, yeah, it totally makes sense, and just call me if you want to talk. And she's like, I just feel the need to walk, and I'm like, so, talk to her and then call me if you need that. And I think I did say something, that's why it's so important not to self-isolate, right? Yeah. So there are people who think that isolating helps them, but I mean, I'm of the opposite, and she didn't have to call me. We didn't have to talk. I think she just needed to reach out to someone who could understand, right? And validate the way she was feeling. And I think that's an analogy for all of life, that you need people in your life. Like sometimes this society or this world can feel isolating. But I feel like we have to make the effort always to surround ourselves with people. I mean, that's my thing,
I will say that I do have times where I need to be alone. And so there were times where I would just take off. And fortunately, I have an art form that I can get out in the middle of nowhere and paint, and I can get in my own space and separate myself. So that was another divorce-free space that I created that was having time to be alone, which actually I think in divorce, it's important that you have that time of adjusting to being alone. Because even though, I'd been separated, we'd lived separately, there'd been, we really weren't together for quite a while. I needed to establish being alone and being comfortable knowing that when I get back, I'm going to be alone, or when I'm here, I'm going to be alone, and I need to be comfortable in that. And I like being alone, so that, I'll disappear in the woods for a week because that's what I like to do. But there was a difference, and I was very surprised by that with divorce, that being alone felt different.
Because you're not just on a trip and you'll come back to your partner. This is it. This is you.
Yeah.
You're out there.
Yes.
Yeah. Unpartnered.
Yeah. And it felt different.
Especially after 23 years, right? I mean, my longest relationship has lasted 8 years. My longest relationship was with a border collie, and that was 14 years. But
that counts. That counts.
I know, but I already had other dogs around, right, when he passed away. So and I've always been a dog rescuer. So it is interesting. I'm unpartnered now. I keep telling everyone I'm in an incel, involuntary celibate, but it's not my choice. But I do enjoy it. There's a lot of aspects of it I enjoy, and I think creating a gratitude practice or whatever, that, okay, this is giving me the space. This is not the end of the world, right? And that's hard. That's really hard for people because in some ways the society, and I think especially where a lot of people want the society to go, is that divorce is a failure, and that when you get married, you have to be married forever, and, all these things that really are not true, and they don't serve the individual.
You bring an important aspect of my upbringing. So I was brought up very conservative evangelical Christian. My father is a minister, my uncle, my aunt, my great uncle. I mean, it's a family business. And I think that's what really stopped me for several years of that fear of failure, of what my family would think. I'd be the only person divorced. First thing, I'm gay.
Right.
Now I'm
get two layers, right?
Yeah, 2 layers.
Right.
And it was that probably did more. And I was so surprised, but not now. I mean, not really. But when I told my family I was getting a divorce, they were so loving and supportive of me. And I shouldn't have made that assumption, and so I allowed those childhood, even though I don't identify with that religious belief and I don't feel guilt, I think there was some subconscious drives with your upbringing of, oh, no, you can't, you failed. Here you were the representer of gay marriage in your family and your community, and you've got a long-term relationship and you're ending it. And so I had to deal with that. But I was surprised. My family was fantastic.
Well,
that's so interesting because I was going to say, Twyla, with that, when you're talking about you're being the representator of gay marriage,
yes,
like that pressure from, your anticipated, kind of response from your family, but the pressure from society, like on same-sex couples to stay together longer than they might do for healthy reasons because of the fear of, we shouldn't have given you gay marriage because you obviously don't really need it because you can't stay together and get divorced. And so that pressure, we really haven't talked about that nuance when it comes to divorce on this podcast, but there is a real pressure of making it work so that you can be this sort of glowing representation of C's. Aren't you glad you gave it to us? We're so happy and healthy. So you felt that with your family, though.
I felt it in family and work because I'm very out. And that's the way I live. That's the way I've lived since I came out. And so in the workspace, I have pictures of my spouse. I had pictures. I talked about my spouse. I really normalized gay marriage. And it was like really important to me that I normalize it with those that with everyone, but particularly then I would hit those that it didn't normalize. And so for me to get a divorce, it was like kind of like, I don't know if shame would be the right word, but that perspective of some people of, see, they can't hold marriages together. And that really, all of it combined was there was an element of shame involved that prevented me for years.
Right, from doing that, which begs the question of what is the purpose of marriage? And, we're talking about this a lot. Corey and I have very different opinions initially. And now that I've been doing divorce law, my opinion is much closer to aligned with hers about marriage in general, right? So I was the hopeless romantic before, but I never in my adult life thought I would be married. I never had any interest in being married. It wasn't even something that I was able to do for most of my adult life. Then I met somebody who'd been married to a man for 20 something years, and we ended up getting married, and then I got divorced. And I wasn't raised with shame or any of that kind of stuff as far as like religion or stuff. So I just view it as, it's part of life, right? And now I look at marriage from a divorce attorney perspective as a legal contract that one needs to really be careful about entering, right? So we can be in love and totally romantic with someone and not marry them. And so going forward, now having been, married for so long, now divorced, would you do things differently if you found yourself in this situation?
Absolutely. And I don't know that I ever want to be married again. Because I think part of the reason that I got married had to do with that Judeo-Christian background because I wanted to legitimize my orientation. I don't feel the need to do that anymore. So then I think about marriage very differently of, why would I get married? Okay. I have thought if I'm in a relationship and it's that time, later in life where I want somebody to get my Social Security or I want someone to get covered on, because I might have better benefits or they might have better benefits. And from a legal perspective, and, then I might do it. But I would never enter anything without a prenup, ever. And I don't think prenup is only for people that have money or, to me, that's not what a prenup is about. Right. To me, you have that agreement to talk about and agree on legally and formally, how are we going to manage money? And I thought I had this with my ex. We had very clear boundaries of how we were not into joint checking accounts. We felt it was very strong that each of us kept our own money separately. And so I thought that's how divorce was going to happen. And then, surprise, it didn't happen that way. So I think even if you don't sign something, I encourage everyone to get one. If you go into any joint ownership, even if you're not married, write out and document, this is how we're going to operate financially. And this is what we agree to financially. And so that way, if you have to end things, hopefully you don't, but if you do, it's really clear and it's not muddy and you stay friends. Because I worry that if you don't do that, you're not going to stay friends. It's highly unlikely because it's going to get messy.
Yeah, it gets very emotional. And I binged the rest of season 8 of Love is Blind this weekend.
But don't do spoilers. Don't do spoilers.
I won't do spoilers. But in anticipation of this conversation, and a prenup was brought up. And one person in their family was acting appalled. And I'm like, okay, number one, I love Love is Blind. I'm a Love is Blind fanatic. I think it's totally realistic that you fall in love with someone you talk to, right? But then, okay, you fell in love with them, but then you're going to actually marry them. Well, why? It's a legal contract, so you better write up something, right? And the fact that, like, certain people's family would be like appalled by it. It's like, well, your family member could end up being so hurt if they don't do this, right? And they're like, oh, you're just anticipating divorce. And I'm like, okay, no. But the reality is 50 to 75% of marriages end in divorce. So accept that reality. Say, okay, this is something we're doing because, maybe we get better benefits. Maybe we're going to have kids if we want to, we anticipate it working out. But in the event it doesn't. That's why everybody hates lawyers, because lawyers say, in the event it doesn't, let's do this, right?
Yeah.
And actually, prenups will destroy the divorce industry. So it's not like lawyers' best interest to promote it. But it does. You're setting up, a prenup is simply saying, look, we came in with this. It's not that if you die, your partner doesn't get your stuff. It's that if you find yourselves moving apart, breaking up, there is emotion. Well, that takes all the emotion out of it.
Yes. Firmly believe that. And, I doubt my family would do that, but I would never enter into anything without a prenup, ever.
Smart, Twyla, smart.
Absolutely.
Hard lessons.
Yeah, hard lessons. But isn't that what we're here on this earth for? Hard lessons.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about it. I was in a registered domestic partnership, so it was as high of a legal recognition as we could get. But we had joint property and a child and all sorts of stuff, and we never did any kind of a prenup, which we could have done something, even if it wasn't necessarily a prenup.
And you can do a post-nup.
We didn't. And Tracy, you were in a marriage, and you did or did not have a prenup.
I did not, and I left with zero because I didn't want to fight. And my ex is quite well off, so it was to her benefit that we didn't. Or we would have agreed anyway, and it would have ended up the same way, right?
Right.
It's just important. I think these are important things to talk about. It's just nobody should get – okay, it just cracks me up that it's like, oh, we're in love, let's get married, and then let's get married, which is a legal contract, and then when someone says, okay, well, here's a legal protection, oh, my God, that's so awful. You're just not romantic, and you're anticipating that we're going to break up.
Yeah.
No, I'm anticipating that the legal system will be involved in the event that we do.
Yeah, and I would imagine very few people understand the law around marriage when they get into marriage. And that was a shocker to me, the whole idea of spousal support. Mm-hmm. I did not realize the Arizona law on spousal support. That hit me hard. And as well as, how much they're going to look at all of the details of your life. And if you don't want that, then get a prenup. Otherwise, there is a certain number of people that are going to know every minute detail about your financial history.
And maybe even what happens is, I mean, I can't tell you how many things I've read that have nothing to do with the finances and are just about the relationship that I'm like, having been a cop, a domestic violence shelter worker, a public defender, I'm still shocked at what goes on. And it will become knowledge to at least the attorneys, if not the judge, if not others. So, I think what you started out saying, like this, maybe we should all live as HR professionals. Like, everything that we're going to do is going to be, and I'm a very reactionary, emotional person, right? And I've already learned this. I've been sued. I've been divorced, all this stuff. And, like, just be a decent person. These should be our lessons, right? Be a decent person. Be upfront. Communicate. And go to therapy. Is that it?
Okay. We're done.
There you go. And if you're Twyla, you build things and paint in the woods, too.
That's right.
There we go.
You have divorce-free space. I actually love that. I think, like, that's my favorite thing out of this is the divorce-free space. Like, because sometimes, like, I had a friend who was calling me that at like 3 a.m. all the time, and then I was helping her, but then she wanted space, differently. And then she got mad at me one day because she was just so sick of talking about it. But I was like, you're the one who started it, right? Yeah. And it's like, so you do, I think, have to have your own space that you can go and just like, okay, I can't deal with this right now. And that can just be an hour, right?
Yeah.
And don't be the person who doesn't deal with it, because if you ignore legal stuff, that just gets way worse. And like yesterday, I did my taxes, and I was talking to Corey on the phone before I did it. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my taxes. And I was sick. I mean, I like wanted to throw up first, and then I did it. And turns out like I got, a good refund. And I thought I was going to owe money. I was like freaking out, and I was so afraid to do it. And then I did it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that turned out well for me.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because I think sometimes there was fear because I didn't know anything about it. Because like I said, I come from a family, nobody's divorced. And so I didn't know anything. And I did operate sometimes in a place of fear, just out of lack of information and lack of knowledge. And when I finally went to see an attorney, which was 5 months after I decided I wanted a divorce and told my ex I wanted a divorce, I felt so much relief of, he was great to work with, and he calmed me down, and, I could really start to work in that place of, okay, how do I move and make the next steps? How do I move forward? And so, but back to that divorce-free space, kind of along those lines, is that's what helped me from not having the 3:00 phone calls with my bestie. Was having that calming time, whatever it would be, if it's meditation for some, or yoga, or just taking a walk, or hiking to Mamak, or, whatever that would be. It's just, I think that is one of the cornerstones that I needed to have in order to come through that. And I think I'm a better person now. I hope I am. I hope I learned some really good lessons, because to me that, anytime you have tragedy in your life or difficulty, you hope you come out on the other side a better person.
Absolutely. Well, goodness, Twyla, this has been so awesome talking to you, especially in this context, because, when we hang out, we don't necessarily sit around and talk about this stuff. And I really do think that this conversation is going to help a lot of people in so many ways, not just like the technicalities of things. You suggested some great advice in there that you got that was really helpful, but also just kind of feeling again that you're not alone. Like if our listeners are going through this and they're scared, you're not alone. There are people to support you, people to help you. Just keep listening to this episode over and over and just know you're not alone. And I think that's what's really important. So Twyla, thank you so much for being on today. We really, really appreciate it. And to all of our listeners out there, until our next episode, go out there and rock those relationships. If you liked what you heard, check out our show notes for resources from today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Rock That Relationship, and go to our website at rockthatrelationship.com for updated episodes and more great information.
Thanks for listening. Now go rock those relationships.